He thought he had everything under control: the job, the love, the cozy home. She said she was happy, made smoothies in the mornings, kissed him goodbye, sent sweet little texts. And then she just said it: "I want an open relationship." But behind the pretty words were unfamiliar hands, foreign scents, and someone else's bed. And when the masks finally fall, the truth doesn't slap you in the face. It carves you out from the inside. No fights, no drama, just a silence louder than any scream. She called it freedom. He called it betrayal, wrapped in trendy language. Are you ready to see what infidelity and cold revenge look like without the theatrics? To feel what it's like when everything collapses, and someone rises from the ashes, not with vengeance, but with facts in hand? When silence becomes the final word, and justice arrives not with fists, but in a neatly compiled folder. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now let's get started. My name is Francis. Up until about a year ago, I genuinely thought I had life under control. I worked full-time as a high school history teacher, spent my weekends refurbishing vintage guitars, and shared a home with my wife, Kara. We'd been together for over 10 years. She was deep in the tech world, working at a big-name SaaS company that paid well and kept her climbing higher with each passing quarter. We couldn't have been more different. I thrived on routine and calm. Kara was a whirlwind, fast-talking, always moving, always scheming up her next big leap. Somehow, our contrasting energies worked, or at least, I believed they did. That illusion shattered one regular Thursday evening. She came through the door later than her usual time. Not late enough to cause alarm, but just enough to make me glance at the clock more than once. No greeting, no kiss. Just let her bag fall to the floor like it carried 1,000 pounds. I was at the kitchen table, buried in a stack of student essays. "Long day?" I asked. She didn't reply right away, just poured herself a glass of wine, her silent signal that something was wrong. She stood there for a few beats before finally turning toward me. "Francis, we need to talk." My gut twisted. That sentence has a way of doing that, especially when it comes out of nowhere. I lowered my pen and looked up. "All right," I said carefully. "What's going on?" She sat across from me, fingers gripping the wine glass like it might keep her anchored. "I've been thinking a lot about us," she began. I frowned. "Thinking how?" She stared down at her drink like she was rehearsing lines. "I feel stuck, like I'm suffocating, like I've been going through the motions instead of really living." I tilted my head, confused. "Not living? We just spent a week in Mexico." She shook her head gently. "It's not about vacations, Francis. It's about feeling free, discovering who I really am. I want to try an open marriage." I blinked, frozen. "What did you just say?" She gave a small shrug, bit her lip like she was asking to change weekend plans, not blow up our entire life. "I want to feel desired again. I need to know I'm still wanted." I stared at her. "You're saying you want to sleep with other people while we're still married?" She nodded, completely composed, as if this was just another grown-up decision to be made. "This is crazy," I muttered under my breath. "Are you already seeing someone?" I asked, watching her carefully. Her eyes flicked, just for a second, but I saw it. "No, of course not. Francis, come on. Why would you think that?" "Because that's how this kind of thing always starts," I said, my voice low and even. "People don't just wake up after 11 years and suddenly want to be pursued again." "It's not like that," she insisted. "I'm not having an affair. I'm trying to be honest with you. This is what people do now. It's progressive." "Progressive," I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping. "So now cheating is just modern love?" She crossed her arms. "You're making this harder than it has to be." I stood slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. No, Kara. You made it hard the moment you decided I wasn't enough anymore. She said nothing, just stared into her glass, like that was where the real conversation was happening. The days after felt unreal, like I was drifting through someone else's life. We barely spoke. She still made her smoothies every morning, still gave me a kiss goodbye like everything was normal. But it wasn't. Something had cracked open between us, and the second blow came soon after. A week later, I got home earlier than expected. Parent-teacher conferences had been called off. I entered quietly and heard her voice coming from the guest room. She hadn't noticed me. Her tone was soft, almost flirtatious. No, not tonight. He's home. My chest seized. I backed out as quietly as I came in. I didn't trust what I might do if I stayed. That night, I confronted her. There's someone else, I said. I heard you. She didn't deny it. His name is Michael. He's a UX designer at my job. We've only been on a few dates. Dates? I repeated, stunned. So the open marriage thing was just damage control. You were already seeing him. I wasn't, she snapped. Not until after I talked to you about it. Oh, well, that makes it all okay, I said, voice trembling with disbelief. I'm being honest with you now, Francis. We can still make this work. You could date too. We'd set boundaries, rules. It's not that strange anymore. I don't want anyone else, I told her. I want you. But you don't want me anymore, do you? She didn't answer, and that silence said more than any words could. That night, I moved my things into the basement. I couldn't sleep beside her anymore. She watched me carry my things down the stairs, never once stopping me, never saying a word. We continued living in the same house, sharing the same space, but the marriage had already ended. We lived like strangers beneath the same roof, bound more by routine than connection. Silence filled the gaps where conversation used to live. Sometimes we still ate dinner together, but words had long since vanished. She'd scroll endlessly on her phone, lost in some digital elsewhere, while I sat across from her, eating without thought, the weight of discomfort gnawing at my insides. On the worst evenings, I didn't return home at all. I'd just drive with no direction, the quiet hum of the engine my only company as I stared through the windshield into nothing. The same question followed me like a shadow. How did it unravel like this? Then came a Friday night that broke the pattern. I stayed out late, lingering at a friend's house, seeking escape from the thick, breathless silence that had settled in our home like rot. When I finally pulled into the driveway just before midnight, her car wasn't there. I didn't need a reason or excuse. I already knew. I walked inside without turning on a light, settled into the living room chair, and waited. No pacing, no shouting, just stillness. My arms crossed, not angry, just empty. I'd run out of emotions to burn. At 1:37 a.m., she stepped through the door. Her hair was tousled, lipstick smudged into a suggestion. The click of her heels on the floor was sharp, definitive, like a gavel strike. She froze when she saw me. There was a flicker in her expression, a barely there twitch, but I caught it. "Why are you still awake?" she asked, trying to sound unfazed. My eyes lingered on her. The scent reached me, a familiar fragrance mixed with a foreign cologne. I didn't need confirmation, but I asked anyway. "Was it Michael?" She hesitated for just a moment, then gave a small, indifferent nod, like she was confirming a shipment had arrived. "Yeah, I told you I was seeing him." "You think this works?" I asked calmly. "Living here while spending your nights with someone else?" "I've been honest with you," she replied. "No," I said, motioning to her messy appearance, to the guilt she hadn't fully scrubbed off. "You tried to rebrand cheating as some enlightened relationship style, but this is just betrayal wrapped in buzzwords." Her expression hardened. "You're being dramatic." "No, Kara, I'm just done lying, to you and to myself." She opened her mouth, maybe to protest, but nothing came out. I stood, slowly, letting the silence widen between us. "You ended us," I said. "I'm just the one finally admitting it." Then I walked past her, down the stairs. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't bluffing. I meant every word. Word got around quickly. Soon, Kara's sister Susan had assembled her own intervention squad. One uneventful Sunday, I walked in from the garage to find them all arranged in my living room. Susan, her ever-opinionated friend Jasmine, and even Melody, the yoga devotee with unsolicited wisdom. "Francis, do you have a minute?" Susan asked, all sugar and strategy. "Not really," I said, tossing my keys on the counter, "but I doubt that's going to stop you." They launched into their rehearsed monologue. Times had changed. Love was fluid. Marriage wasn't what it used to be. "You're being rigid," Jasmine added. "Kara's trying to bring you into this. That's brave. That's real love." I nearly laughed. "Love? That's what we're calling this now?" Melody piped up. "You're just afraid she'll find someone better." I locked eyes with her. She already did. And the tragic part? I don't even care anymore. The room went quiet. I had loved Kara. Deeply, genuinely. I gave her everything I had. But the moment she called someone else's arms her liberation, she made her choice. I was just making mine. I didn't immediately head to a divorce lawyer. Maybe I was still clinging to denial. Maybe I hoped she'd wake up and realize what she was throwing away. But part of me knew better. So I stopped hoping. I got smarter, colder, quietly tactical. I hired a private investigator. Not because I needed emotional closure, I'd buried that long ago, but because I needed facts, leverage, insurance, in case things turned ugly. And given how careless Kara had become, I didn't think it would take long. I was right. 9 days later, the investigator handed me the first set of proof. Photos. Her and Michael at a rooftop lounge downtown. Her hand resting on his thigh, his mouth at her ear, every image time-stamped. So much for her transparency. Then came the video footage. Grainy, but damning. A parking garage by her office. She approaches his car. They kiss, clingy and reckless. She gets in. The car doesn't move for 42 minutes. Next day, same location, same ritual. Then came hotel snapshots. Taken from across the street, outside a mid-range hotel just off the highway. Different dates, same outcome. She checks in under her real name. He shows up shortly after. No attempts to be discreet. No clever cover. One photo carved itself into my memory. Them walking out the next morning. Her dress from the night before still hugging her frame, hair pulled back in a lazy bun, sunglasses hiding her eyes. Smiling. He held her laptop bag like it was no big deal, like it was part of his routine. That's what shattered me. Not the betrayal itself, but the ease of it all. As if none of it was accidental. As if this wasn't a lapse in judgment. No, it was intentional. A parallel life, sustained by lies and careful planning. And still, every night, she'd come home and smile like everything was perfectly ordinary. That's when the ache gave way. The grief didn't deepen. It hardened into something sharper. It wasn't rage. It wasn't chaos. Just a cold, unwavering certainty, like a light flicking on after stumbling through darkness for far too long. I took everything the private investigator handed me, photos, receipts, detailed reports, and printed it all. I slipped it into a plain manila folder, unmarked. No need for drama, just the facts. I placed it on the dining table like a quiet verdict. On top, a short handwritten note. I'd already sent copies to my lawyer. Divorce papers were on the way. I didn't stick around for a fight. I didn't steel myself for tears or screaming. I made myself dinner, poured a glass of whiskey, and slept through the night. For the first time in weeks, I actually slept. Deep, uninterrupted rest. No nightmares, no restless tossing. No 3 a.m. spirals wondering where she was or who she was with. By the next morning, the folder had disappeared. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. That silence carried more truth than any apology could. What I didn't expect was how quickly her mask would fall. I thought she'd walk away clean. Kara always had a way of staying on her feet. She exuded polish, poise, and an unshakable sense of control. I figured she'd spin it, cast herself as the victim, and carry on like nothing happened. But life doesn't always offer graceful exits. Michael wasn't just some co-worker she caught feelings for. He was her direct report, and the company had strict rules about supervisors dating their subordinates. I never picked up the phone or wrote a formal complaint, but someone did. Someone who maybe had a folder full of irrefutable proof, time-stamped documents, hotel records, discreet surveillance, a narrative impossible to dismiss. HR doesn't typically act fast unless everything's already been handed to them, neatly packaged. About a week after I left that folder out, she came home early one afternoon. I was on the couch, sipping coffee, flipping through channels, soaking in the quiet. She walked in like her legs weighed 100 pounds, dropped her bag on the floor, and stood there frozen, torn between anger and collapse. "They let me go," she said, her voice cracking. Her face was pale, her eyes frantic. "Michael, too." I didn't respond. I didn't ask if she begged, if she wept, if she tried to pin it on him. None of it mattered anymore. That door had already shut. She stood there for a moment longer, as if hoping for compassion, maybe even redemption. I offered neither. She turned and went upstairs, closing the door behind her. Days went by. I caught fragments of her voice in the kitchen, soft and strained. She kept saying his name, over and over, like a prayer. I didn't catch the full conversations, just stammered greetings and long silences. By the end of the week, the calls stopped. Michael had vanished, cut her off completely, blocked her number, erased her from his life, disappeared without explanation. No closure, no last words, no storybook ending. Suddenly, the future she thought was hers disappeared. No job, no lover, no control over the narrative. And worst of all, she was still under the same roof as the man she threw away. But after a couple weeks, she packed up and left, moved into a condo across town while the divorce made its way through the system. Months passed. The separation turned out smoother than I expected. No drawn-out legal fights, no emotional showdowns. She didn't resist. I think by then she understood she'd lost more than just the argument. She'd lost the moral high ground and the will to fight. When the dust finally settled, I kept the house. A few people criticized me, said I was being too cold, too unyielding. But the ones who truly knew me didn't question it. I wasn't chasing some modern idea of love reimagined. I just wanted my marriage. I wanted Kara. But the woman I'd married was already gone. A few months later, she messaged me. It was long, rambling, full of guilt, full of sorrow. She missed what we had, said she hadn't realized how good it truly was, that she'd made a huge mistake. I never replied. Some things are better left untouched. Some silences carry more weight than any words. And if you're reading this, take this with you. Love can't exist without trust. It's not a trend. It's not a phase. You don't fix a marriage by setting it ablaze and calling it evolution. And if someone ever asks you to betray your values to make their life easier, remember this: your self-respect is not up for compromise. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. Imagine that one day the familiar world begins to fray at the edges. It doesn't explode, doesn't shatter all at once, just quietly crumbles like sand slipping through your fingers. You look at the person beside you and see everything except who they once were, as if your reflection no longer exists in their gaze. One evening, one word, one detail, and suddenly your reality is no longer yours. It's not the kind of pain that screams and tears you apart, but something deeper, heavy, like a stone you can't cast away. What do you do when the truth becomes sharper than a blade? When every gesture and word is a reminder of betrayal? When you look into the eyes of someone you trusted and see only a stranger? Sometimes the answer doesn't come right away. Sometimes it stretches through the night, seeps into the silence, fills the emptiness. Sometimes you have to fall apart to find your way back to yourself. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watch this video from. Now let's get started. You rarely notice the precise moment when your world begins to slip away. It's not a sudden break, more like the quiet unraveling of a thread, pulling loose at the seams. One day everything feels familiar, solid. Then suddenly, it doesn't. For me, the shift began on a Friday evening. Delilah told me she was going out to meet her friends from college. Just a girls' night, she said with a casual smile, kissing my cheek on her way out. Don't wait up. But of course I did. I always did. Midnight came and went, then 1 o'clock. I kept glancing at the clock, trying to seem relaxed. By 2, my phone felt like an extension of my hand. I told myself not to worry. I lied. Something wasn't right. At 2:30 a.m., the front door finally creaked open. I was already in the hallway, arms crossed, trying to keep my face neutral. And then I saw her. Delilah looked wrecked. Her hair was a mess. Streaks of mascara lined her cheeks. One of her heels dangled from her fingers. The strap of her dress had slipped off her shoulder. Her eyes avoided mine, glazed, distant. You all right? I asked, my voice low. She nodded a little too quickly. Just tired? She mumbled. Can we talk tomorrow? 100 questions surged to my lips. Where had she been? Who was she with? But I bit them back. I helped her up the stairs instead. When I leaned in to steady her, a strange scent of unfamiliar cologne drifted past me. Something inside me gave way. Still, I stayed quiet. For now. I helped her out of her clothes and pulled the blanket over her. She murmured something as she settled in. Faint, slurred, incomprehensible. She told me it meant nothing. I froze. What was that? I asked. But she was already drifting into a heavy, intoxicated sleep. I stood over her for a long time, staring at the woman I once knew, wondering when she'd become a stranger. Morning arrived, spilling light across the kitchen. I hadn't slept. My coffee sat untouched, gone cold hours ago. My thoughts looped around the same phrase from the night before. It didn't mean anything. What didn't? A moment? A lapse in judgment? A betrayal? The weight of it gnawed at me. At exactly 8:13 a.m., I heard her footsteps on the stairs. Delilah emerged, eyes bloodshot, hair tousled, one hand pressed to her temple. She looked unsure, bracing for silence or fury. Hey, she said softly. I didn't speak, just pointed to the table. Her shoes sat there, scuffed and dirtied, next to the necklace she'd worn. It was broken. One of the beads had split clean in two. I'd found it crushed in her bag, like it had been stepped on or yanked off. She followed my gaze. Her expression shifted. Color drained from her face, then rushed back in. Luke, I can explain, she began. I know how it must look. Do you remember what you said last night? I cut in. My tone was even, but I felt frozen from the inside out. She blinked, tried to recall. Then she sank into a chair and covered her face with her hands. We went downtown, me, Tabitha, and the usual crew. I drank too much. Honestly, I don't even remember how I got home. Tabitha said I fell near the Uber, she added. Dropped my purse, probably when the necklace broke. I let her talk. What about the dress? I asked. She hesitated, her voice faltering. I don't know. Maybe it ripped when I fell, or someone grabbed me by mistake in the crowd. It was packed. You know how it is when people drink too much. Her words tumbled out quickly, like she was racing to fill every gap before I could widen them. But her eyes never quite met mine. Her hands wouldn't stop moving. She was giving me a version of the night, but I couldn't tell if it was the real one. I didn't push. Not yet. Part of me still clung to the hope that I was wrong, that I was seeing patterns where none existed, that the worst-case scenario was still just a thought, not a truth. But deep down, I felt it. This was only the beginning. The days that followed blurred together. Delilah carried on like everything was fine, like nothing had happened that night. But I hadn't forgotten. Her excuses felt flimsy, the shattered necklace, the torn strap, the vagueness. I said nothing. I waited. Then came Thursday. I got home earlier than usual. My last meeting had been called off. Delilah had mentioned she'd be out running errands, and I thought maybe we'd spend some time together. Grab a bite, catch up, something simple, something steady. But when I pulled into the driveway, her car was already parked. I unlocked the door and stepped into silence, the kind that felt heavy, deliberate. Then I heard soft footsteps above. Laughter followed, light, carefree. Her voice floated down like nothing was broken. I moved toward the stairs, quiet and slow. At the top, I stopped short of the landing. Delilah was in our bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. "Oh my God, Aria, it was insane," she said, laughing without the slightest trace of guilt. Her tone was airy, almost flippant, like nothing that happened could possibly weigh on her. I didn't mean for it to go that way, honestly, but a few drinks in, and it just unfolded. She paused for a beat, her voice dipping, shaded with something dangerous, something exhilarating. "I wasn't expecting him to be that good," she continued, her words thick with memory. "It was like he wasn't even human. The way he took charge, the way he moved, it was unreal. He just knew exactly what to do, and when." My jaw clenched so tight I heard a faint crack in my neck. She kept going, oblivious, like she was casually reading off a to-do list. "It was supposed to be a one-time thing," she said, matter of fact. "Just something I needed. Honestly, I've been feeling nothing for a while." "Luke's great," she added, almost as if she felt obligated to say it. "He really is, but it's like I'm invisible to him now. Anthony sees me, really sees me." And there it was, his name finally out in the open. Anthony. She gave a soft, dreamy laugh. "I already told him I'm coming back tomorrow. Same hotel, same room, same time." Her voice practically hummed with anticipation. "And there's no way I'm missing it." There wasn't even a flicker of remorse, no hesitation. She didn't sound like someone wrestling with a decision. She sounded like someone booking a weekend getaway or talking about a concert she'd waited months to attend. I stood frozen, hands gripping the railing until my knuckles turned white, heart pounding, every word a fresh blow to the chest. My ears started to ring. For a second, I wasn't sure if I was going to stay on my feet. I should have barged in. I should have made her say it to my face instead of whispering it like some giddy confession to her best friend. But I didn't. I turned around and walked back down the stairs. Each step dragged heavier than the one before, because now I knew. And that knowing, the certainty, cut deeper than any fight ever could. This wasn't some accident she regretted. This was a choice, a deliberate path she was continuing to walk. She wasn't tormented, she was glowing. And as I stood at the bottom of the stairs, something inside me hardened. No yelling, no begging for honesty. I would gather every last piece of truth she'd hidden, and I would let it bury her. That night, after she went to bed, I did something I never thought I would. I picked up her phone. She hadn't even changed the passcode. Maybe she thought I didn't have it in me to look. The first thing I saw was a thread labeled A. Anthony. My stomach dropped. I tapped it open. Dozens of messages. They weren't graphic. She was smarter than that. But the meaning was obvious. "You looked incredible that night," he'd written. "I haven't stopped thinking about you." And her reply? I've been counting the hours. I need tomorrow to come faster. I leaned back, staring at the screen, a hollow ache spreading through my chest. I had to know who this guy really was. His full name was right there in her contacts. A quick search told me everything. Social media painted the rest of the picture. Anthony was married. His wife's name was Ellie. They had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. His page looked like something out of a Hallmark ad. Birthday parties, fishing trips, Halloween costumes. He looked like a man who had it all. And just like Delilah, he was throwing it away behind closed doors. The next evening, she got dressed like she was preparing for something sacred, because to her, that's exactly what it was. I watched from the kitchen as she stood in the hallway mirror, painting on lipstick like war paint. That red blouse? She hadn't worn it in over a year. It clung to her, low-cut and unforgettable. That shirt was for being seen. Her heels echoed with sharp confidence as she crossed the floor. She picked up her purse and tossed out a casual, heading out, without even looking at me. Where you going? I asked, voice flat as ice. Girls' night, Tabitha's birthday. The lie rolled off her tongue like she'd practiced it. I nodded slowly. Let the silence stretch. Let her wonder what I was thinking. Tell her I said happy birthday. She smiled, tight, rehearsed, and walked out like nothing was wrong. I gave it 2 minutes. Then I grabbed my keys and followed. Her taillight slipped into the traffic, and I kept my distance. No sudden moves, no headlights too close. Just the quiet shadow of someone who sees everything. She drove into the city and parked behind a nondescript bar, the kind of place people choose when they don't want to be found. I waited from across the street, engine off. 10 minutes passed. Then a sleek car pulled up. He stepped out like he'd walked off the cover of a magazine. Every detail perfect. His coat, his hair, his posture. He glanced at his phone, checked his surroundings, and leaned against his car like he owned the night. Then she appeared, Delilah, coming down the sidewalk like it was a scene written just for her. She didn't look around, didn't hesitate, just walked right up to him. And there, in the open, they kissed. Like they had every right to. Her arms wrapped around his neck, his hands firm on her waist. No hesitation, no shame. She laughed, carefree and light, as he whispered something in her ear. And her smile, it was the smile of a girl who'd just climbed out her bedroom window and gotten away with it. I lifted my phone and started snapping pictures. One caught their kiss, another froze them mid-embrace. The last showed her staring up at him like he'd just solved every question she'd been carrying. My gut twisted, sick, empty, cold. I kept watching just long enough to see them disappear inside together, moving like they'd done this 100 times before, like they belonged in sync. I didn't follow. I stayed behind the wheel, knuckles white against the steering wheel, jaw locked tight. Part of me burned to march in there, grab him by the collar, and drag him out under the weight of their lie, force her to explain herself in front of strangers. But what would that do? What was I even trying to salvage? A marriage held together by silence and half-truths. A woman who didn't bother to hide the fact that she'd chosen someone else? No, that wasn't strength. That was desperation pretending to be dignity. And I wasn't going to plead for someone who'd already let go long before I knew to hold on tighter. So I drove home. Alone. But I had the evidence. That night, I called a locksmith. Told him I needed the locks changed, no waiting. He came a little after 10, finished quickly. By 11:42, the new locks were in place. I heard the doorknob turn, once, twice. Soft at first, the handle jiggling, a low rattle, then a knock, then a second, louder one. I stayed still. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Her name lit up, Delilah. I let it go dark. She tried again, then again. I let them all ring unanswered. The knocking escalated to pounding. Her fists slammed the door, sharp and desperate. "Luke!" she screamed. "What the hell is this? Open the damn door! I waited, just long enough for panic to set in. Then I opened it. She looked like the aftermath of a storm, mascara smeared, hair undone, one shoe in her hand, the other probably lost somewhere between guilt and panic. Her expression flickered between confusion and fury. "What is going on?" she snapped. "Why won't my key work?" I changed the locks. "You did what?" "If you're going to lie to my face without flinching, you don't get to have keys to my home." She froze. "Luke." I pulled out my phone and opened the gallery. Swiped through the photos, her with Anthony, holding hands, locked in a kiss, laughing like I never existed. Her face collapsed in on itself. "So where do we start?" I asked. "The lies? The cheating? Or how you looked me in the eye and told me you were out with the girls?" She didn't say a word, just stared at the screen. "You're finished here," I said, voice flat. "Tomorrow I'm filing for divorce. Your things will be packed and sent to your parents' house." "Luke, wait. Please, it's not what you think. No, it's exactly what it looks like. And you made that choice. Now leave." She didn't fight. Just turned away, wiping at her face, stumbling back toward her car. She never came back. The next morning, I sat across from a lawyer, laid everything out, and got the process started. That same afternoon, I sent the photos to Anthony's wife, Ellie. She replied in less than an hour, "Thank you for telling me." 2 days later, word came through that Ellie had kicked Anthony out and filed for divorce herself. Delilah tried reaching out. A handful of calls. Long texts filled with excuses, confessions, pleas. I ignored them all. There was nothing left to say. The divorce went through fast. No children, nothing to split. 6 months later, it was over. I heard Delilah had moved in with her sister. Some mutual friends said she tried to get back in touch with Anthony, but he'd shut her out. Maybe his world fell apart harder than hers, or maybe finally he saw her for who she really was. I didn't care either way. I was free. At first, the quiet was sharp. The house didn't feel peaceful. It felt abandoned. But that passed. I started working out again, took a solo trip to the mountains, surrounded myself with real people, the kind who speak plainly, love honestly. I laughed again, slept through the night without waking in anger. I wasn't searching for someone else. I was rediscovering the man I used to be. And I found him. Delilah lost a man who would have gone to war for her. I lost someone who was never truly mine. But I found myself, and in the end, that was everything. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. Falling in love with an illusion is like building a house out of smoke. You invest, nurture the dream, feel the warmth, but the moment reality blows through, it all vanishes. Rick was used to order, to stability. His life was like a perfectly calibrated security system, simple, reliable, predictable. Until she stormed into his world, bold, fiery, crafted from flames and words. They seemed like perfect opposites, whose collision created something beautiful, or so he thought. Betrayal rarely arrives in dark alleys. More often, it waits in your own living room, disguised as love. And when the truth shoots through you like a cold-blooded sniper, there's only one choice: keep drowning in the lie or drown it yourself. Today, Rick chose the latter, and his silence is about to speak louder than any vows. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watch this video from. Now let's get started. They say clarity always comes after the fact. A year back, I was certain I had life dialed in. A solid job, a cozy apartment, and a partner I imagined building a future with. I never anticipated the twist. My name's Rick. I'm 34, raised in a small farming town where my parents made their living off the land. They were the type who let their work speak louder than their words, who believed in rising early and only talking when necessary. That's the mindset I grew up with. I stayed focused, kept my head down, and carved out a life that revolved around order and simplicity. I've been in cybersecurity for a logistics company for several years now. It's not flashy work, but it's steady. It keeps the lights on and gives me peace of mind. I never craved extravagance, just consistency, a little quiet at the end of the day, and someone to share it all with. That someone turned out to be Sable. We crossed paths at a corporate event I had no intention of attending. She was everything I wasn't: bold, charismatic, dressed like a magazine cover come to life. People noticed her the moment she entered a room. She carried herself like she belonged on a stage, yet somehow she noticed me, a guy half hidden in the corner. We started chatting, and surprisingly, it clicked. Before long, we were spending a lot of time together. It began the usual way: dinner dates, drives that stretched past midnight, binge-watching movies. She brought this electricity into my world, and I like to think I gave her a bit of calm in return. Or maybe I just needed to believe that. She made me feel like I didn't have to be anyone else, like I was enough. Looking back, I might have wanted that feeling more than she intended to give it. But in the moment, I didn't second-guess anything. Everything seemed to fall into place quickly. 6 months in, we moved in together. By the time a year passed, I proposed. Sable worked in personal branding, helping clients shape their public image and curate their lifestyles. I never fully grasped what her day-to-day looked like, but she clearly excelled at it. She had this captivating energy, an aura that made people want to listen. She could sell a dream, and for a while, that included our dream. At first, her lively spirit was exhilarating, but gradually it started to wear on me. The little comments began to surface. Harmless at first, but they stuck with me. She'd tease me about my clothes when we went out, saying I looked too plain for someone in tech. She suggested I upgrade my car, implying that driving a Civic gave off the wrong impression. Occasionally, she'd scoff when I talked about my job. One night at dinner, she said, "If you mention firewalls one more time, I'm going to lose my mind." She laughed after, but it hit me harder than I let on. I brushed it off, told myself she was just being candid, that I was reading too much into it. She was confident, blunt, stylish. I figured I was being overly sensitive. When it came time to plan the wedding, she took over. Upscale venue, designer dress, luxury photography, the whole 9 yards. I didn't object. I took on extra work, fixed people's Wi-Fi on weekends, passed up trips. I kept telling myself it was all for her happiness. That's what love's about, isn't it? You stretch, you sacrifice, you show up where they need you. What I didn't realize at the time was that I was the only one doing the reaching. It all unraveled on a Tuesday. Funny how regular days can hold the biggest betrayals. Tuesdays are usually predictable. Routine meetings, inbox cleanups. Nothing unusual. But that particular Tuesday unraveled everything. I had a break between meetings and decided to head home early. Sable had been swamped with wedding stuff, flowers, RSVPs, some disagreement with a vendor I couldn't quite keep up with. I thought I'd do something small to lift her spirits. I picked up her favorite Thai dish on the way home. Didn't text, didn't call. I just wanted to surprise her. Just a quiet gesture to say, "I'm here for you." But the second I stepped inside, something felt off. The apartment was too quiet. No playlist in the background, no TV chatter, not even a podcast. My first guess was she'd fallen asleep. Then I heard her voice, coming from the bedroom. She was on speaker. Her tone was playful, almost flirtatious. I froze halfway down the hall, a sinking feeling urging me to stay put. "He has no clue," she said, laughing. "He's off somewhere playing tech savior for the company." My heart slammed to a stop. I didn't know who she was talking to yet, but her voice said everything. That laugh wasn't the one she used with me. It was sharper, colder. Then came a man's voice, cool, familiar, like they'd had this exchange more than once. His name was Max. So Thursday's still on? He asked. Definitely, she replied. He's working late. I'll have the whole apartment. I felt the takeout box tilt in my hand. My palms were slick from the condensation, but I stood frozen. My thoughts were a mess, my heart pounding loud enough to drown everything else out. I tried to convince myself it was a joke. Maybe they were acting, teasing about someone else, anything but what it sounded like. But she kept talking. I mean, I love Rick, sort of. He's reliable, you know. God, he was insufferable. Every time he launched into another monologue about his job, I had to pretend like I cared. Fake smiles, nodding along like I wasn't dying of boredom. Max let out this smug little laugh. Not loud, just a knowing snicker, like this wasn't the first time he'd heard her rant. What about the wedding? He asked, eyebrow raised. Oh, it's still happening, Sable said with a shrug. You think I'm just gonna eat the cost of that venue? No way. I want the photos. I've been organizing this thing forever. She tossed the words out like she was discussing weekend plans. I'll deal with the rest later, she added, like it was just logistics. And that did something to me. Broke something, actually. The betrayal, yeah, that crushed me. But what really hit was how casual she sounded. Like none of it carried weight. Like I was irrelevant. It wasn't about us. Not really. It was about ticking boxes. I wasn't her partner, just a placeholder until someone better came along. I didn't burst in, didn't shout or demand explanations. No drama. Just pulled out my phone, hands barely steady, and opened the recorder. Tapped the red button. She kept talking, throwing out flippant remarks. Even joked about maybe inviting Max to the bachelorette party if schedules aligned. Like it was all just entertainment. Like I didn't matter. And then she said something that hit me like a punch to the ribs. I still think about that last night, she said, grinning. That hotel suite, the wine, the view, it was perfect, and Rick footed the bill. Then she laughed, loud and careless, like it was an inside joke. I let it go on for a bit longer. My hands were shaking, heart racing. When it was enough, I ended the recording, slid the phone into my pocket, and walked out without a word. The takeout bag was still dangling from my hand when I reached the car. I sat in the driver's seat and just stared ahead. No music, no phone, just silence. Me and the weight of everything I'd just heard. That's when the shift happened. Not in some explosive argument or late-night confrontation. Right there, in that parked car with dinner cooling in my lap, I realized the truth. She never really loved me. To her, I was a convenience, a bank account, a body to stand next to in pictures. I didn't blow up right then. God knows I wanted to. Every time I looked at her, I had to fight the urge to scream. But I knew how it would play out. Tears, excuses, spinning the story until I was the villain. No, I didn't want noise. I wanted clarity, something undeniable. So I waited. The days that followed were brutal. I acted the part. Went to work, came home, kissed her like nothing was wrong. Every "I love you" from her felt like a lie wrapped in sugar. Behind the scenes, I was preparing. Saved the audio in 3 places. Printed out phone records. Cross-referenced her calendar with nights she was working late. It wasn't just Thursdays. Talked to my friend Kyle. He'd gone through hell with his ex. She doesn't deserve your silence, he told me. If she made this mess, she should have to sit in it. And that's when the idea sparked. The engagement party, her pride and joy. Chic rooftop venue downtown. Gourmet catering, DJ, professional photographer. All her idea. It's going to be iconic, she said. A statement. The start of our forever. That was the caption under one of our posts. I smiled, nodded. Let her run the show. But now, it meant something else entirely. Her people would all be there. Friends, family, colleagues, the ones she was always trying to impress. She thought it was her big moment. I decided it was mine. I arrived late, deliberately. She was already in her element. Black dress hugging every curve, bold red lipstick, wine glass in hand, basking in the attention. I walked in wearing jeans and a plain tee that read, "Trust is earned." She spotted me instantly, blinked. "Rick, what are you wearing? Are you okay?" I didn't answer, just made my way to the mic beside the DJ and gave it 2 taps. "Evening, everyone," I said. "Sorry to break up the fun. I just have a quick message about the woman I was going to marry." Sable froze mid-smile, eyes darting around the room. Her mom was mid-toast. "Sable is stunning, smart, driven." I paused. "Very, very driven. And for the last few months she's also been having an affair with a guy named Max." A wave of gasps swept through the crowd. Murmurs rippled. Glasses clinked in confusion. I raised my phone and hit play. Her voice echoed through the speakers. "I still think about that last night. The hotel, the wine, the view, it was perfect. And Rick paid for all of it." Silence. Someone dropped a fork. Sable rushed toward me, panic written all over her face. "Rick, stop it! What are you doing?" I turned to her, calm, unshaken. "I'm doing what you never could," I said, telling the truth. And then I turned back to the room. There was no ceremony, no ring, and no more facade. I stood in front of everyone, expressed my gratitude for their presence, apologized for the harsh way the truth had unfolded, and then I walked away. Just like that. In the days that followed what was supposed to be our engagement celebration, life felt like standing in the eye of a storm, strangely still, yet surrounded by wreckage. I ignored every one of Sable's calls. She wouldn't let up, call after call, piling up in my voicemail. Then came the texts, endless blocks of text filled with rationalizations and flimsy half-apologies. According to her, I'd misunderstood everything. Nothing had happened with Max, she claimed. It was all just talk. She chalked it up to wedding pressure, said she hadn't meant any of it, and insisted she was merely venting. Then came the classic deflection. "I was only joking. Don't you know me better than that?" I refused to reply, not one word. That's when her tone shifted. Her messages became sharp, her voicemails seething with anger, laced with sobs, accusations, venom. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You ruined everything, Rick. You're cruel and spiteful. You could have handled this differently." The speed with which she turned from guilt to fury was dizzying. I cut off all contact, blocked her number, changed the locks on my door, reset every password she might have remembered. I wasn't about to give her a single way back in. The fallout hit her like a freight train. Sable had spent years crafting her image. She was the expert in appearances, the branding queen, the woman with the storybook life, perfect partner, perfect plans. But that illusion collapsed in a heartbeat. Clients started dropping her. Her polished persona cracked. Even her business partner, Rebecca, messaged me out of nowhere. "You did what most people only dream of doing. You exposed who she really is." And then there was her sister, who reached out too. "I always had a feeling," she admitted. "I hate that it happened like this, but I'm not surprised." Those words stuck with me, because in truth, this was never about revenge. It wasn't retaliation. I'd simply reached my limit with pretending. I needed honesty to mean something, even if it made people uncomfortable. For too long, I'd minimized myself, as if I needed to prove I was worthy of standing next to her. But that night, at that party, I reclaimed the dignity I had been slowly handing over. And she was left alone with the mess she'd made. No rebranding, no spin, no carefully worded apology to win sympathy. Just silence. It's been 6 months. Do I miss her? Sometimes. But not her exactly. More like the version of her I once believed in. I loved the picture we painted together. The dream of us, more than the reality of her. I heard she tried to give things a shot with Max after everything fell apart. Didn't last long. Word is, he bailed after a few weeks. Apparently, commitment wasn't really in his wheelhouse. That part didn't catch me off guard. What did surprise me was this. I sleep through the night now. I laugh without holding back. I speak about my work without downplaying it. I pull up in my beat-up old Civic without a second thought. I'm not looking to date. Mostly, I'm focusing on rebuilding trust in myself. And if there's one lesson this whole experience carved into me, it's this: trust the subtle discomfort. Pay attention to those tiny moments that don't sit right. Listen to how someone speaks about you when they think you're not paying attention. Because love, real love, isn't about the picture-perfect moments, the fancy nights out, or the flawless social media feed. It's built on respect, and once that's broken, no amount of effort, apology, or longing can fix what's already gone. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you?